Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where it's Friday, December 30th, and I'm coming to you from indoors today because it's too cold outside to make a video. I had planned to go outside because it's really quiet outside today, but it's just too cold. So my family are out shopping for food and drinks and stuff for the New Year's holiday, so I've got a little bit of time by myself indoors, so hopefully I'll have time to get this video done before they come back. The New Year's holiday is the big holiday of the year in Japan, and right now, even though it's Friday, the city looks pretty much abandoned. There's almost no traffic on the streets and very few people walking around. Most people have already gone out to their hometowns in order to spend the New Year's holiday with their families. My own family are at the grocery store right now buying food and drink and picking up our osechi ryori for the holiday. Osechi ryori is kind of the traditional Japanese food. It comes in these large lacquer wood boxes, and they're divided into compartments, kind of like what they, obento, which they serve for lunch here. But the New Year's, they're very much better food. It's designed to be able to keep for a few days without having to be put in a refrigerator, and it's really tasty stuff. And what we do is New Year's morning, we make a toast for the new year, greet everyone and wish them a happy new year, and then pretty much spend the whole day eating and drinking and watching TV and trying to relax and have a good time. When I was a kid in America, these family get-togethers usually kind of devolved into arguments and things like that, and they weren't always pleasant. As kids, we could just kind of go out and play basketball and get away from it, while the adults, kind of brought up their old gripes and things and complaints and bad memories and things like that. But here in Japan, people kind of avoid doing that on the New Year's holiday. It's supposed to be a positive time. So we're really looking forward to the New Year's holiday, and hopefully next year, 2023, will be a great day or a great year for everyone. So let's go ahead and get started with the subject of today's video, and today I'm going to be talking about another Minolta camera, and this is the Minolta X7, which was released way back in 1980. 1980 was an interesting year for photography, and it was the year of the consumer 35mm SLR camera. Film photography had pretty much peaked at around that time, and camera manufacturers had released a variety of these kind of cameras, and the Minolta X7 is kind of a textbook example of the consumer SLR camera. And what these were is they were cameras which were based around a particular lens mount, and in Minolta's case this was the Minolta MD mount, and they attached a rather simple, somewhat less expensive, and much easier to use camera to match this lens system. And what you ended up with was a rather inexpensive camera attached to a professional quality lens, which could give you really professional quality results in your photography. The cameras usually featured automatic operation, and some of them featured even things like automatic winding and whatever. And because of the being able to use a professional quality lens, you could get really good photographs out of them, and plus you had a large number of lens options. For example, the MD RAW mount, you can get fisheye lenses, you can get super wide and wide angle lenses, macro lenses, telephoto lenses, super telephoto lenses, reflex lenses. Pretty much any kind of lens you can imagine was made by Minolta to fit this mount, and that makes this camera actually very suitable for just about any kind of photography. And with its very simple operation, this allows an amateur who has very little understanding of photography to get professional quality results in a variety of situations. So a really good idea, and of course with the increased popularity of zoom photography and cameras, more compact cameras which could feature these less expensive and simpler zoom lenses, that kind of I guess did away with the consumer SLR camera. But if you really want the maximum potential out of a less expensive camera, a camera like this is really hard to beat. So let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions of the Minolta X7, starting at the top here, which looks very much like a typical SLR camera of that era, but there are a few differences which I will describe as we go through the video. Of course, we have the typical film rewind knob, which is pretty much in almost all cameras in the same place, and this doubles as the release for opening the film door. Around the rewind knob, we have the main, selector, and power switch for the camera. When you're operating the camera, you will simply switch it to the on position where the orange mark is there. Below that we have a BC mark, which stands for battery check, and when I switch it to that position, the meter needle will move inside the finder to the battery check position. And if it lines up, then that means the batteries are charged enough or in good enough condition to operate the camera. The next thing we have here is the off position. That's pretty much self-explanatory. And then we have a self-timer mode. When you operate this camera in the self-timer mode, you simply switch it there, you wind it, you push the shutter button, and the LED on the front of the camera will blink and a speaker will beep. So if you can't see the LED, you can hear the speaker. If you can't hear the speaker, you can see the LED. It's pretty much a foolproof situation. If you're blind or you can't hear, you can use the camera either way. Moving over to the top here, we have a flash shoe, and you can use any flash you like with this camera. If you use the Minolta flash, that's what this extra pin is here for, the Minolta X series flash, you get automatic flash operation, and the camera will automatically select the X sync shutter speed, and this gives you the correct shutter speed for operating the flash. And then you would simply operate the aperture depending on the recommendations of the flash. If you are not using a Minolta flash which is dedicated to this camera, you can simply use the X sync speed setting here on the dial. Moving over to this dial here where we would normally expect to see the shutter speed adjustment, we actually have the film speed adjustment, and to set the film speed you simply pull up on the collar around this dial and turn it one way or the other, and you can see the numbers there switching in the dial, and you just switch that so the number in the window matches the number which is on the film. Very simple and very easy to use. There's a lock button here, and when you press this lock button with your finger, you can turn the entire dial. For pretty much 99-point-something% of your photography, you will simply use the A setting, automatic setting. A good thing about this camera is it does offer a bulb setting, and this is really good for things like astrophotography or long exposures. With this camera, despite it being a consumer camera, it still offers you this feature. Another good thing this camera has is exposure compensation plus or minus 2 stops. And in most cases, you don't really have to worry about the exposure compensation, but in certain situations, it's very nice to have, which is why all professional and serious cameras come with this feature. For example, you are going to the mountains to go skiing, and you're taking pictures of your friends and family out on the snow, and you want the snow to actually look white. What you'll do is you'll have to increase the exposure compensation a little bit to capture more light and make the snow white. In the opposite situation, say you're trying to take a picture of a black car or someone who's wearing a black coat and you actually want those to look black, then you will change the exposure compensation the other way and decrease the exposure. That will make blacks look black rather than gray. Cameras kind of use modern cameras with built-in light meters kind of choose a middle ground in between dark and light, which is called about 18% gray. And if you're shooting anything which is white or black, the camera tries to find its way to 18% gray. In most general photography, you'll get the correct exposure. Just when you're shooting things where there's lots of black or lots of white, it's a very interesting feature to have. And the last setting here is the X sync, and you will use this setting if you are using a non-Minolta flash, which is not dedicated to the X7 or X series cameras. Over here we have the, let me turn off the self-timer there. We have the film winding and shutter charging lever, and next to that we have the film counter dial, which resets automatically when you open the film door. On the back, we have the viewfinder eyepiece, and the wonderful feature about these cameras is a nice large viewfinder and a very nice field of view. It's very bright, so it makes focusing very easy, even in situations where there aren't a lot of light. The finder window here is dovetailed on either side, and this allows you to attach either an eye cup or diopter adjustment lenses. There are basically two styles of diopter adjustment lenses. There are the slide-on style or they're the screw-in style. Canon and Nikon use the screw-in style. Minolta, Pentax, and Olympus use the slide-on style. Usually you can get away with using Pentax or Olympus diopter lenses on the Minolta and vice versa. They're pretty much universal. Of course, you can't use the round screw-on types with this camera. On the bottom of the camera, we have the battery cap here, and this camera is good in that it uses very easy to find LR44 or SR44 batteries. You can find these anywhere for next to nothing. We have a standard 1/4-inch tripod socket. Over here we have the release button, which you depress to rewind the film. And here you have a coupling for attaching a power winder. And power winders were kind of a big thing in those days. They could make your consumer-looking camera into a professional-looking camera. Nowadays, for a lot of cameras, you can get the accessory battery grip, and it doesn't do anything other than add battery capacity to the camera, which can be quite convenient if you're like me and you're shooting videos with the camera and the battery goes down rather quickly. Not so much necessary on this, and they add a lot of weight and heft to the camera. Back in the day, they were really cool. Nowadays, I wouldn't bother with one. They're on top of being heavy, they're also noisy and kind of cumbersome. They do make the camera a little bit steadier and easier to hold, but personally, I think just the normal winding system is perfectly adequate for regular use. On the front of the camera here, we have the LED here for the self-timer. We have a speaker here on the top. We have a release button, which you depress to release the lens. And an odd thing here, we have the cable release attached to the front of the camera rather than in the shutter button. And I guess that's a good enough position for it. They have it set like this, so if you're taking, say, portrait mode, you can set the camera sideways like this. And here we have a sync socket for attaching an accessory flash. Or you can use multiple flashes with this camera if you like. And this allows you to use other flash accessories, slaves, and things like that in order to actuate the flash. Overall, this is a really simple, easy to use, inexpensive camera. The lens mount makes it very easy to use with a large variety of lenses. If you're looking for a camera which pretty much all you have to do is just focus and shoot, this is about as close as you're going to get. The aperture priority automatic system is very easy to use. All you have to do is set the aperture. Of course, the smaller numbers on the aperture mean that the aperture opens up wider and allows more light to go through the lens. And this makes it easier to use the lens indoors or in places where there isn't much light, but it reduces the depth of field. And that's the area which is in focus. If you're shooting outdoors in the sunlight, you can close down the aperture to let less light through the lens, and this increases depth of field. Regardless of what setting you have, just depress the shutter button and the camera will select the best shutter speed for that aperture. Right in front of these aperture numbers, we have a depth of field scale, which lets you know how much depth of field you have at any given aperture. And we have an infrared mark for those handful of people out there who still use infrared film. And here we have a focusing scale, which is arranged in both meters and feet. So that's it for my review of the Minolta X7 camera. I won't be making any more videos until after the new year, so probably the soonest I'll be able to make a video is next Wednesday or so. If you'd like to see that video, please subscribe. As I always say in my videos, I'm trying to get more people interested in vintage cameras and film photography, and if you click the like button, that helps a lot. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.